There is a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world, and that's why I am on the trail of the Nephilim. The Genesis 6 narrative states that the Nephilim are on the earth in those days and also afterwards. If that's true, can we find evidence that corroborates this? I'm L.A. Marzulli. Join me as we go on the trail of the Nephilim. Our story today begins when we go back to Peru, to a very ancient site, certainly pre-Inca, as you'll hear our good friend Brian Forrester state, Aramu Muru. And this is a gateway, and we'll get into that and so much more. But first, a word from our trusted sponsor, Noble Gold. Hey, folks, you know it's almost 2023, and nothing has really changed, has it? The year's about to end, and things are even more expensive than they were at the start of 2022. But what if I told you there is a way to protect your wealth next year? I'm talking about Bank of America's recent outlook for 2023 of gold to tip up maybe around $2,000 an ounce and silver to 25 buckaroos an ounce in the second half of the year. And that's just the beginning. Looking at 2024, B of A sees gold prices remaining elevated with an average price of $2,086 an ounce. So what are you waiting for? It's not too late to add precious metals to your IRA. Thousands of people have retired comfortably with the help of Noble Gold Investments and their gold and silver IRAs. If you've been a hesitant investor, but one of the handful of Americans who can go for gold and silver in your IRA, now's the time to act. If you get in before the end of the month, you'll bag an incredibly free 3-ounce silver American Virtue coin with every qualified IRA of 20 grand or more. Call 877-646-5347, 877-646-5347 to find out more. Or please check it out online at noblegoldinvestments.com. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. So here's the gateway. Very strange place. When I got there, and I've talked about this before, there had been a ritual done by the Shamans the night before. The candles were still burning. There were flowers. There was a makeshift altar in front of a doorway. They know what it is, and I'll talk about that story after the clip from Brian. So here's Brian and I at the doorway. This doorway allegedly, and I'll read you the text, which is extremely interesting. This is up around, 12,000 feet, 13,000 feet, right near Lake Titicaca, the highest lake on the entire planet. How does that work, right? So it's very close to the Bolivian border up in Peru. The mountainous area, very strange place. If you ever have an opportunity to go there, I would suggest doing that. However, as you'll hear after we run the clip and do the thing, I'll tell you a story that one of the docents told us, who actually was brought up on that site and lived there. So here's another shot. So here's some verbiage on Aramu Muru. In the early 1990s, mountaineering guide Jose Luis Delgado Mamani was exploring the Peruvian countryside when he came across an area where the rock had been smoothed to a flat surface and adorned with a small alcove. Known as Aramu Muru and located on Lake Titicaca near the border with Bolivia, the flat stone is roughly 23 feet square, with a T-shaped alcove, some 6 feet, 6 inches tall, carved into it. What purpose the space once served is unknown. But the most likely explanation that this was an abandoned Incan construction project. I completely disagree with that. 100%. I don't believe, as Brian doesn't either, this is certainly pre-Inca, maybe by 1,000 or 2,000 years. We don't know. Locals just had to call the doorway the Puerta de Jayamarca, or the Gate of the Gods. And local legends apparently speak of people disappearing through the doorway, as well as strange sights. This is tall men accompanied by glowing balls of light walking through the doorway. So is it really Puerta de Jayamarca, the Gate of the Gods, or is it the Devil's Doorway? Are these angelic beings the good guys coming through this gateway, or is it something else? Was the Catholic Church sort of right in this for once, maybe, calling it the devil's doorway? You'll get into that. You'll hear Brian's explanation, and, Brian's not here to defend himself. We have a disagreement on what this thing is, and I'll weigh in on it after the clip, but let me finish the verbiage. But as much of this type of reporting comes back from those who believe the doorway to be some kind of a portal, such as paranormal writer Jerry Willis, who claims to have traveled through the doorway, it is hard to know which local legends are legitimate. And photographs of people goofing off in and around the multidimensional portal do little to add to its mystique. So before we roll the clip, let me say this. Why are the shamans there? Why are the shamans there the very night before we visit the site? They're there at like 1 o'clock in the morning. Why are they there? Why, if it's just an Inca deal and it's just something carved in the rock and there's no gateway or no portal there, then why are the shamans there? The shamans know exactly what that gateway is, and we'll talk about it. But first, here's the clip. We're here at a very strange place, literally in the middle of nowhere, by Lake Titicaca, called Amaru. And also, it's the English translation, I guess, is the Devil's Doorway. Brian, tell us about us. Where are we here? What is this place?
Well, we're actually near the Bolivian border. We're still in Peru. We can see Lake Titicaca right in front of us. The designation of Devil's Doorway is something that the Catholic Church put on this site.
Okay.
Any ancient so-called pre-Columbian site usually was renamed by the Catholics, given a negative connotation. So Muru is the name of this site, and literally no one knows who made it. It's not an Inca construction. It's older than that. And it's quite mysterious. It's the only one of its kind I've ever seen, where you have this false door, and then you have these channels on the left and right side. We actually had some very, very sensitive dowsers here a couple of months ago, and they were able to pick up energy coming out from this main doorway, which they said was a masculine energy, and then energy coming out from the two side channels, which were feminine in nature.
Put a positive, negative type thing, charges, if you want to relate it that way.
Well, male,
yin
female.
And yang, male, female.
Yeah, yin and yang.
Right.
Yeah, more than positive and negative.
Okay.
But clearly they picked up energy coming out from this, from these channels. And the thing is, now it's used as a New Age kind of ceremonial site. Some people believe that if you kneel into the main doorway there, your consciousness can actually travel to other places on the planet. Some people have said that you can physically travel through the door, which I don't believe, but it's a very unique, intriguing site.
How old do you think this site actually is?
Well, I would say a minimum of 1,000 years, possibly 2,000 plus.
And this is all sandstone behind this, correct?
Yeah, it's red sandstone, so it's very high in iron, so that would naturally give it an energetic quality of some kind.
Okay. Have archaeologists looked at the site? Has any archaeological work been done here?
Not much, really. The interesting thing is that even the local people don't know who originally made it. They do have very odd stories, though, that very late at night or very, very early in the morning, that shining beings come out from the central doorway.
What do the shining beings look like, and how tall are they, or don't they know?
Well, they're usually described as being humanoid looking, tall, as in taller than the average person here.
Okay.
And basically light beings that come out and then go back in again.
And we've heard this before from other legends and other cultures around the world. Can we talk to one of the guides, you think, or the docents that are here? You mentioned this earlier. They might be able to tell us some stories.
Yeah, well, the thing is that this site is not part of the national archaeological system.
Okay.
It's actually controlled by the local villagers, and so they would be the ones to have an intimate knowledge of its history and what it represents.
Great.
And that's always important, I think, when you go to an ancient site. Archaeologists can sometimes figure out aspects, but it's very important to hear the oral tradition if there is one. And the best situation is when the archaeology and the oral tradition blend together to tell a really full story.
That's great. Okay, well, let's talk to let's maybe find one of these local people and see what they have to say about it.
Okay.
Great. So here it is, the gateway. Is it the gate of the gods or the devil's doorway? Which is it? All depending on your paradigm. Why are the shamans there? Let's get something straight. These shamans do something. They know what the elongated skulls are. And when Brian discovered this one particular area next to Pumapunku, which was recently excavated, the shaman came in and took the largest elongated skull and never gave it back. Why? Because he knows exactly who these guys are. Are they Nephilim? In my opinion, they are. Now, people can disagree with that. They'll say it's cradle headboarded. Watch number 6, DNA, the explosive, the conclusive evidence. We have doctors and surgeons and all sorts of people, anthropologists and archaeologists, come on the record talking about these elongated skulls. These are not, I'll say it again, these are not cradle headboarded. While there is cradle headboarding done in all these places, this skull you're looking at right here is not cradle headboarded. And that's all I'm going to say about that. If you really want to do a deep dive, go to our streaming site, streaming.lamarzulli.net, and download number 6. Or if you want to buy the DVD so you can watch it over again, which I highly encourage you to do so, go to lamarzulli.net, but I digress. So here is the devil's doorway. Is it the gate of the gods or the devil's doorway? Which is it? Depending on your perspective. In my opinion, devil's doorway. Why? The shamans are there. What are the shamans? How do you become a shaman? Well, you can take ayahuasca, but at some point in time, you've got to make a blood sacrifice. It's all about the blood. It's always about the blood. You've got to make a blood sacrifice. I sat down with Jimmy Etzetti, and I've got that footage. I've never aired that interview with him. It never really fitted into anything, so maybe we'll do an On the Trail with Jimmy Etzetti next Tuesday. You'll find it absolutely fascinating. Jimmy told us that he was studying to be a shaman, a medicine man, in the Hopi tradition. And in order to get the power, all right, and to wear the animal skin and to begin to transmogrify into your totem, whether it's a crow or a wolf, that's where the dogmen come in and all that. But once again, these are deep, deep dives, and I don't have time to get into that in this particular interview. But Jimmy Etzetti stated on the record that he got right up to the finish line, and in order to get the power, he had to kill a family member, and he couldn't do it. I'll say it again. In order to get the power to become a full-blown shaman, he had to kill a family member. I'm not making this up. I'm not making this up. And if I can, I've got the footage, and I'll try to dig it up. Someone needs to remind me, John Adam, for next Tuesday's On the Trail, and we can do that. I will dig it up, and I'll show you the Jimmy Etzetti where he actually interview where he actually talks about that. So getting into this, after this interview with Brian, I interviewed one of the docents. This guy, this young man, grew up on the site. And I've shown that clip before, but maybe we'll roll it again at a future interview. But the bottom line is this. He said when he was a boy, his parents would see light beings coming out of the gateway. Light beings coming out of the gateway. Are they benevolent or malevolent? We don't know. But once again, I circle back to why the heck are the shamans there? Why are the shamans? The shamans know exactly what it is. So this docent told us on the record that a friend of his accompanied a shaman, and they went through the doorway. Well, the shaman's protected because he knows exactly what he's about to get into. The young man that accompanied him had no clue. The young man came back. He was completely crazy, a total mental breakdown. And I asked the guy I asked the docent, well, where is he now? He's in a mental institution. He's in a mental institution. Folks, we're not equipped to go into the second heaven. We're not equipped for this as human beings. That's why we're told in the guidebook of the supernatural, i.e. our Bibles, do not engage with necromancers or fortune tellers or, people who worship the stars, astrologers, soothsayers, magicians. They get their power. Shamans, they get their power, but the power is sourced from the dark side. So here in the First Nations people, and I'm not talking about Native Americans here, the modern day industrial age, well, there are no shamans in America, that we know of, but there are. In the indigenous tribes, there still are shamans. They're still practicing their arts. So what we have is this rise of Wicca in this country, this new age philosophy where it's sort of everything is okay and it's like, as long as you don't hurt anybody. But what is the truth? The biblical prophetic narrative tells us exactly what the truth is. And that's what we espouse on this show and all of our other shows absolutely every day. The coming UFO invasion, exposing the dragon's dark secrets. All I can tell you is this: the warfare has been off the charts concerning this film. It has jeopardized our family. That's all I'll say about that. We covered your prayers. We really covered your prayers. But we're under the gun. Surprise, surprise. Is it any wonder that I go on Coast to Coast last week, where perhaps millions of people hear my interview with George Norrie, and George and his co-hosts we're totally blown away by this. Tom Danheiser, totally blown away by this particular film, which is number 4 in the UFO film series. In fact, Joe Horn over at Skywatch TV watched the trailer and he said, my gosh, LA, the cadence of this is unnerving. In other words, the way the show builds. It may be the most important film I've ever done to date. Why? Because we expose the dragon's dark secrets. So some of you may be asking yourself, LA, why have a tie today? Normally you don't wear a tie. I'm headed over to Prophecy Watchers to sit down with our elder brother, Gary Stearman, and then our younger brother, Mondo Gonzalez, and talk about number 4. And that'll be available in the upcoming weeks. So there you have it. Anyway, folks, you can please check out our Christmas store. It's now no longer in existence, but there's a lot of still great things to buy. I would say you've got to get stuff in by today in order for us to ship it to you for Christmas, and more than likely it'll become after Christmas. The window is narrowing. That's why yesterday was really our cutoff date with the Christmas store. But look, if you're interested in number 4, I would highly suggest you get it. You can. We're not putting up on streaming yet because we've got some other deals in the works. More about that later if they actually manifest. If it doesn't, it'll be up on streaming as soon as I find out. But we may have a distribution deal, and that's all I'll say about that. You can pray for that. It'd be great to get it out in a much larger platform than what we have here. Thanks so much for watching On the Trail of a Nephilim. I am your intrepid host, L.A. Marzulli. Please remember this. There is a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world, and that's why I am on the trail of the Nephilim.
Something very dark and disturbing is happening. It is a global phenomenon that knows no boundaries. It adheres to no cultural mores. And the ones who are engaged in this nefarious activity do so with impunity. People are being taken against their will, in the cover of darkness in the dead of night. They are subjected to bizarre examinations that are often sexual in nature. These people are terrified, violated, confused, and with no place to turn to, as who would believe them? This is their story.